Welcome back to One True Podcast. With me, as always, is the one, the only Zach Smith. Not the one, the only. Yeah. There are a lot of Zach Smiths, including
Baylor
a
quarterback.
Baylor quarterback.
Right. Yeah. There was a coach, Zach Smith. Let's not talk about him. Stick with the Baylor quarterback. I can't throw the ball. I was throwing passes with Walker White the other day at practice, and my arm is not where it was in high school.
There are also a lot of Jim Barneses out there, including a former Baylor volleyball coach who was a Jim Barnes, but there's only one Jimmy B, and we're glad to have Jim Barnes, former Waco Tribune-Herald sports editor, my predecessor. Jim had 2 different stints at the Trib, correct?
Yes.
Yep. Just like Chad Conine.
That was,
only the greats have 2 stints.
The Trib was my first job right out of college. Came there in 2000 started as a copy editor when the sports still had a separate copy desk, and then branched out, did some reporting. I know you and I shared the high school beat for at least 1 year, maybe 2. And then left the Trib, and then came back in 2007, and then eventually became sports editor. And of course, that was it seems like it wasn't that long ago, but you think back like that was the dawn of the Art Briles, and then the Robert Griffin era was when I was there, and then left Waco in 2012, and then I'm just now this year, started in August. I'm the sports editor here at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram now, which is my hometown. So.
Yeah, very cool. We're so glad Jim's back in Texas, and looking forward to seeing him on Saturday. So let's jump in and talk some Baylor TCU. So it is the revival of the Revivalry, y'all, on Saturday. I'm never going to call it that other nickname, which is just lame. Nobody calls it that. Baylor heads to Fort Worth to play TCU for the 121st time, is what I read. This is a series that just consistently delivers wild, weird, strange, more often than not, down to the wire games. So what do you guys think? Are you expecting that kind of game on Saturday, and who are you going with?
Okay, I'll go ahead and go first. I mean, I agree. Just getting back into this Big 12 mode of things. I mean, you just look at the results week to week, and you're just like, these games go down to the end. Usually something happens at the end. I mean, even the games and specifically that Baylor and TCU have played this year have a lot of games that have gone down to the end. I mean, I'm talking to my people about, there's a world where TCU is 6-0 this year. I mean, they were ahead 17-0 on Arizona State and lost that game. They gave up 2 defensive touchdowns against Kansas State. So there's a world where they're 6-0. There's also a world where they're like 2-4.
Yeah.
I mean, they kind of pulled out the SMU game. Even Colorado was right there with them. And I know Baylor's kind of the same way in some of their results. Certainly SMU and Kansas State came right down to the end. And I think Saturday's going to be just like it. I mean, I expect there to be a lot of points, and I expect it'll come right down to the end. Now, I think TCU plays much better at home. I think coming off this loss, I expect them to be ultra focused. I know Baylor does have a rest advantage, but just my personal prediction on the game, I do think TCU will pull it out. I'll call it, 38-34. But I do think TCU will win Saturday.
Zach, that sounds very similar to Baylor, doesn't it? In terms of 2-4 to 6-0. I mean, that sounds like Baylor's season.
I mean, yeah, like looking at Baylor's season, it's like they've really played nothing but like absolute bangers of games, 2 14-point comebacks, a walk-off field goal for Arizona State in that loss. So it's been just close games all around for Baylor for the most part all season. And I agree. I think this is going to come down to a field goal. I mean, 2 of the last 3 in this series have been walk-off field goals. And so, yeah, I think the Vegas line was 70.5, the over-under to start, which was absurdly high. So we know where you're going to get points. And when you've got quarterbacks like Sawyer-Robertson and Josh-Hoover, who are quite literally statistically the top 2 passers in the country, like you're gonna get points. You're gonna get fireworks, and it's gonna be a good one. And to me, it comes down to the running game, just because I think that Baylor's running game is, I think, due to take a step. You get Omar Egbedion back after the bye week. He missed a game. Bryson-Washington is feeling more than, closer to 100% after the week off. And TCU doesn't or hasn't really had much of a running game so far this season. And so I think that's an opportunity for the Bears to kind of, take a step, and that's the spot where they can maybe take an advantage. So I'm taking Baylor. Maybe this is the return of the optimistic Zach Smith. I'm taking Baylor in this one. It seems like whenever I get optimistic, things go poorly for Baylor.
And it is funny how whenever you go up, I go down, vice versa. And I'm sticking with Jim Barnes on this one. I'm going TCU. And my thought here is kind of the Vegas thought, which is home team gets a 3-point edge. I feel like TCU at home, that'll help them. But it's not going to surprise me. The only thing that would surprise me is if nothing weird happened. Like that would be the only thing that would surprise me. Jim, so John Boy and I, the year that Gary Patterson got fired, I've told this story like 3 times on this
I'll put the photo back in.
Yeah, there you go. The year Gary Patterson got fired, Baylor plays TCU immediately after that, right? And the Frogs are reeling, and Baylor looks like they should win comfortably. And it was just a crazy, crazy day. It was the Chandler Morris game. It was his first ever starting game at TCU, and he went off. But the weirdest thing was we're sitting in the press box, and this guy 2 rows down from the press box looks just like Gary Patterson. Like it was his doppelganger. And I took a picture of him, and I was like, is he here? What's he doing? It was just so weird. But that's I'll never forget them playing TCU in an absolute typhoon in 2019, where it took triple overtime for anybody to reach 20 points. It was just a crazy weather game. This game always is weird. So that's what I expect. But as far as the outcome, who knows? So I tend to look at this game as a potential springboard, like a launching pad for these teams. Both are 4-2. They've got half their schedule left to play. And both, I would say, have some landmines out there, on the schedule still left. But I wouldn't put it past either one of them to run the table. I think the potential is there, at least. I mean, here Jim just said, TCU could have been 6-0. Maybe they'll finish 6-0. So what do you guys think? Is there an end of season run coming for Sonny-Dykes' team or Dave-Aranda's team? What do you think?
Well, I do think that, this is a tremendous pivot point game for both teams, because I think that team that goes 4-3 is going to be feeling really bad Saturday afternoon. The vibes will be very bad. I do think, running the table in the Big 12 the rest of the way is very tough, but I could see either one of these teams. They're just going to be in every game and have a chance to win every game. And I can see them getting hot and doing that. And not out of the realm. I think when you look at the Big 12, I think, we can all agree it seems like Texas Tech is above everybody else. And so, but there's a real positioning to who's going to be the other team in that Big 12 championship game. And I think TCU and Baylor are both right in the mix, but the loser of this game is probably in really bad shape, So it's a critical game. And I know just around here for Horned Frog fans, the vibes will be bad if they lose this game at home to Baylor. So, Sonny-Dykes, they were in the national title game in 2022. Sonny's not going anywhere. He's earned some buy-in here, but the natives will be restless for sure.
Yeah, it's funny how quickly things change in college football. Yeah, for sure. Zach, what do you think?
it's hard for me to not parallel this to last year and think of where Baylor was and kind of the feeling going into the bye week last year, the first bye week last year. I think there was a real chance that if Baylor goes to Texas Tech last year and loses, dave-aranda is not the head coach. I think that's a very, very
completely
real.
agree. Completely agree.
But I mean, you see kind of the puzzle came together in the bye week that sparked that run. They smoke Tech, and then they go on that kind of 6-game winning streak to end the regular season that gave them all the momentum going into this year. And so I think, well, Baylor is 4-2, and I think vibes are still kind of weird.
They are weird.
I think there are some parallels to where, if hopefully, I think Baylor hopes they use the bye week again to kind of maybe figure out some things on defense, get healthier, find a running game, and maybe another road test against an in-state rival can be that springboard, much like it was last season, to kind of get the Bears where they want to go. So certainly this can be a springboard, and I think recent history suggests that it will be.
And if you're looking at it from a Baylor perspective, this game this week might be Baylor's toughest game left. They do go to Cincinnati the week after that, and suddenly Cincinnati is looking like, better than we expected. Ranked team now. But you get no Texas Tech on your schedule. You get no BYU on your schedule. You get Utah at home. There's some very winnable games out there for Baylor. So I agree. I think it's out there. And I do think the fact that they did go on that 6-game winning streak last year, Zach, helps them realize that it could happen again. The vibes are weird just because I feel like there's a fair amount of angst and disappointment, certainly in the fan base. But I just think that speaks to how high the expectations were going into the season. All right. So the Big 12 wise, the latest CFP projections I've seen have one Big 12 team in the field. Generally, that's been Texas Tech. That's what people are projecting. So what is the best path for this conference to get at least 2 teams in? And is this going to continue to be an issue for this league going forward, where they're kind of playing third fiddle, fourth fiddle to the SEC, Big Ten, and maybe even sometimes the ACC?
Well, I do think, we know how the national media machine works. The SEC and the Big Ten are obviously, in a sense, we call it the Power Four. It is the Power Two in the next two, at least the way perception is, at least when it comes to football. Now, I think the path for the Big 12, the simplest path is Texas Tech goes 12-0 and then loses the Big 12 championship game, and then maybe and then 12-1 Texas Tech can maybe still get an at-large. That to me seems the most likely scenario to get to a way to get 2 Big 12 teams in there. And even that would depend on how bad did Tech lose and how the rest of the country shapes up. But generally, I think a 1-loss team has a strong chance to make the playoffs still. So that to me is the most likely scenario. If Tech runs the table, what are we talking about? Can a Big 12? So can a 2-loss Big 12 team get in? I think it's going to be tough. I think it is going to be tough. And so until the top of the conference is just perceived as a little stronger, I think people see that all these games are competitive, but they're not viewed nationally as that top of the SEC and top of the Big Ten. So I do think they're going to be stuck with one team, other than I do think that scenario that if Tech goes 12-0 and loses the Big 12 title game, Tech would probably still get it at large.
Sure. Zach?
Jim nailed it. That's kind of the only scenario I can see. I don't think anyone is, even if Mac Rhodes is the head of the selection committee and you have a Big 12 guy in charge of it, I struggle to think that a 2-loss Big 12 team is going to get in over a 2-loss SEC or Big 10 team. That's just not happening. From a bigger picture perspective, though, I think that the Big 12 is kind of swimming upstream a little bit because you've got Texas Tech spending all this money and yelling about it, rightfully. They're winning, but until you have more teams doing that, and I think Baylor and TCU are certainly starting to do that a little bit more. They're picking up some recruiting momentum. They're picking up some national momentum in that regard. But until you have more than just Texas Tech doing that, there's no chance you're going to compete with the SEC and the Big Ten, and I think as we move closer to a Super League coming in, 5 or however many years, it's going to be a struggle for teams like Baylor and TCU and not Texas Tech, to kind of compete with the bigger schools. And so certainly I think this league is going to continue to play third or fourth fiddle behind the Big Two as we move forward.
So I feel like the Big 12 in football has a perception problem. But I also understand that perception is reality. And here's where the Big 12 can help itself win more games, win those non-conference games against the SEC and, the ACC and the Big Ten. And when you get in the playoff, win a national championship. How big would it have been for the Big 12 if TCU would have actually won in 22? Huge. I think absolutely. Not just big for the Frogs, but big for the conference. So ultimately, you got to go win it and prove it yourself on the field. I think that's what the Big 12 has done in basketball. And it's why, it's looked at now. It maybe took a step back last year. Maybe the SEC passed it, which was kind of an unusual thing. The SEC hasn't always been that great in basketball, but you had Texas Tech playing for a national championship. You had Baylor winning a national championship. You had Kansas winning a national championship the year after Baylor did. They've gone out, they've won games, they've proven themselves. And then you add more good basketball programs like Arizona and stuff. They're really strong in basketball. They need to take that approach and just go win some games, prove themselves on the field, and then the perception will change.
I don't think that the divide is as wide as maybe the media, we are the media, between as the world thinks it is, between the SEC and the Big Ten and the Big 12. Look at Arizona State last year. They were very, very, very close. I was at that game against Texas at the Cotton Bowl in the playoffs. They were very close to beating Texas, who went on to play for the national championship. So, I don't think that the divide between Baylor and Auburn, or TCU and certainly North Carolina, who they beat earlier in the year, is as wide as everybody thinks it is.
Yeah, I completely agree. And incidentally, did y'all see the comment that Brent Venables made? So I'll read it.
Then he got roasted by the Big 12.
So Venables said, this isn't the old Big 12 days where Oklahoma destroys everybody every single week except one game of the year. And then the Big 12 Twitter account claps back. And whoever's running the Big 12, good job. But it said, Coach Venables lost 8 conference games in his 2 seasons in the Big
12. Maybe Coach Venables wasn't the best messenger for that. I saw somebody point out hey, maybe Bob Stoops could pop out his chest about what they did.
Yeah.
Zach and I were in Dallas on Saturday. We watched Brent Venables' team, and they didn't score touchdowns. So
yeah, and 3 of the last 4 years haven't done so against the Longhorns.
Certainly Oklahoma football had a strong track record of success.
Sure.
Right.
But that was well done by the Big 12. All right, so this week brings us the Holy War between Utah and BYU. It's a top 25 battle. A lot of bad blood in that rivalry between 2 in-state programs. Sounds a little like the Revivalry, maybe without the top 25 rankings this year, but
more Mormons.
Or Mormons. Yes. So in this new look 16-team Big 12, what would you guys rank as like the top, let's say, 3 rivalries in this league? And do you feel like in this sort of landscape that we have of college football now, where you have, Arizona and West Virginia in the Big 12, just teams, you have UCLA and USC in the Big 10, like, does the Big 12 need to lean into those rivalries and kind of promote them and publicize them?
Well, I think part of the problem for the Big 12 on the rivalry front is that the league is so new, kind of the way it's shaped. I mean, because if you go through, there are some intense rivalries, but are they intense beyond the fan bases? I mean, like to us who grew up in Texas and have lived in Waco for work, I mean, to me, like Baylor TCU is a great rivalry. Does anybody beyond the borders of Texas really view it as a great rivalry? I don't know. I mean, I do think as I look down the Big 12 list, I was like, all right, Utah and BYU, that's a very intense rivalry that I do think gets some national attention. I think there's Kansas and Kansas State has plenty of hate. That's not always hasn't been relevant when it comes to football, though.
Mm-hmm.
And they're very new to the Big 12, but Arizona and Arizona State is obviously a very hate-filled rivalry, but they haven't really had relevant games in the Big 12. I do think one thing that's unfortunate, especially with Tech being so good this season, is they're not playing Baylor or TCU. I mean, that's kind of unfortunate. And I know in a 16-team league, there, people are not going to play some people, but I do think going forward, if Texas Tech becomes a monster, it'll be unfortunate for them if they can't guarantee having a nice in-state rivalry game every year. I mean, I know they did play Houston, but that's not, I mean, they were not in the same league for a long time. So I don't know. The league would have to stabilize for the rivalries to mean something. I mean, that otherwise, like, if teams are going to be moving in and out every few years, it's hard to be like, well, Arizona State is part of the fabric of the Big 12, So I do think the Big 12 needs to stabilize, and then you'll see some of those rivalries maybe naturally develop. I mean, maybe after a number of years go by, like, maybe Central Florida turns into a rivalry with somebody, but they're not right now.
Sure. Yeah. Zach?
I kind of disagree. Like, I don't really care. I know that Baylor and TCU isn't necessarily going to maybe move a national needle every single year. Maybe one true champion year it does, or 61-58 it does, or fire drill, whatever. Maybe every once in a while it does, but I think it is more for the fans. I care about the fans. I think that the fans are what make the rivalry. And I think that I would say the top 3 in the Big 12 are the Holy War because of the fans, the Revivalry because of the fans, and I would argue that Farmageddon is up there too.
Those are the 3 that I thought of too. I agree.
I love a good fan
Farmageddon
base
over Arizona State.
I love a good fan base that enjoys a crisp bush light at 9 a.m. Like that's college football right there. I think that like the Big 12 should, and sonny-dykes correctly said this at the end in his press conference, they should make rivalry week maybe the end of the year and try to just put them all at the end of the year.
Yep.
We get Texas A&M at the end of the year. We get Michigan, Ohio State at the end of the year, and we get the Egg Bowl at the end of the year. And those have all become national games because of it. And so I think there's an opportunity for the Big 12 to become more national if they put these games at the end of the year. And I think that it would mean much more.
See, I agree with both of y'all. Like, I see Jim's point that a lot of times nationally, maybe Baylor TCU doesn't move the needle. But I also agree, Zach, like if you put these at the end of the year, you really pour a lot of focus into them and a lot of marketing and that kind of thing. I do think nationally, maybe more people would care. It was weird having Farmageddon in Ireland, obviously, to start the season. But I do feel like that rivalry is typically better for the reasons Jim said, that Kansas just hasn't often been that relevant in football. In basketball, sure, but they've gotten better under Lance Leipold, but and we remember that they were good for a hot minute under Mark Mangino, but I feel like that's more of a rivalry in Kansas. But the K-State Iowa State rivalry, Farmageddon, it's got a good name, And I also feel like, Zach, you kind of hit on this, but like, to me, college football is more about places like Ames, Iowa, and Manhattan, Kansas, than it is about Orlando and Houston and Cincinnati. No offense to those programs, but I know when the Big 12 added those teams, they were like, okay, we've got some big TV markets and stuff. Yeah. Well, guess what? The fans in Manhattan and Ames are a lot more rabid than they are in Cincinnati. And, in Cincinnati, they care about the Reds,
Mhm.
In Houston, they care about the Astros and the Texans. And, Houston is still fighting that commuter school kind of vibes. So, yeah, I like I said, I agree with both of y'all. Lean into these rivalries, Brett Yormark. We're going to get a chance to hear from Brett Yormark tomorrow, Zach, at the tip-off luncheon. Jim, he'll be here down here for the tip-off luncheon. So maybe we'll ask Yormark about that. But yeah, that'd be cool to have rivalry week. And I do also agree with Jim that we need the butt bowl every year. BU and TT, we need the butt bowl. I want to see the butt bowl in the Big 12 championship game. That's my dream this year.
We need a butt bowl trophy, maybe like a giant, like brass ass, like. Pardon my French.
Hey, you know how Yormark likes those halftime shows. If it's a butt bowl Big 12 championship game, they need Sir Mix-a-Lot out there.
Oh Lord,
Jim, I don't think it was called the Butt Bowl back when you were sports editor. But
I don't remember us. I don't remember us calling it.
But it's taken off now. It's unofficially the Butt Bowl, and it should happen every year, like you said.
Well, the funny thing is, back in those days, Tech was sort of so far down the list. Really, I mean, I think that's. Don't want to disparage Tech and the great Chad Conine. They were sort of like everybody's third best rivalry, seemingly. Like even when Texas and Texas A&M were in the league,
Yeah.
And so now, given the way the league stands now, I'm like, well, gosh, Baylor, TCU, and Tech should be playing each other every year. I mean, I know that makes the scheduling tough, but hopefully they'll stay together in the same league, and maybe some of that will develop. And certainly if Tech becomes the perennial leader in the conference or contender every year, then those rivalries will become more important.
Especially since if you look at it, obviously Baylor fans hated the A&M, they hated Texas, they wanted to beat them, but more often than not, the Aggies won, the Longhorns won. It was a lopsided rivalry. The Tech rivalry for Baylor is much like TCU's. It's been a very close series throughout. So, yeah, I agree. Play that one every year. Jim, we're going to close with this. We call it Culinary Corner. And, of course, you're a Fort Worth guy. You grew up there, went to Castleberry High School, a proud alum. And John and I used to go to Kincaid's. That was our place. I heard that there's now a Hideaway Pizza in Fort Worth, which blows my mind. That's my favorite pizza in Oklahoma. So that will be a stop at some point. But like, when you were growing up, and where were you excited to get back to and eat at once you got back to Fort Worth here recently?
Oh man, that's a good question. Of course, growing up, and I know, Bryce, you and I, neither one of us grew up with a lot of money. Like, to us, like Olive Garden was pretty dang fancy when we were kids. I think, the difference, and it wouldn't be one place to call out. It was just in general. I'll say, coming back from Las Vegas, which is where I've been for the last 13 years. There's a big difference between Tex-Mex and then like West Coast Mexican food.
Sure.
And I was very happy to be back here having Tex-Mex.
Nice.
Where you just order a bowl of queso. Back on the West, it's all like queso fundido and all that kind of, stuff. It's like, here, just a bowl of queso, maybe with some beef in it,
Yeah.
I haven't been to, I still need to get by Kincaid's. I haven't got there since I've been back. But it would just be sort of all these little hole in the wall Tex-Mex restaurants have been, kind of what I've been frequenting to get my fill. And the same thing wherever you go, finding a good chicken fried steak in Las Vegas wasn't always so easy.
Yeah.
Around here, everybody's got chicken fried steak, and you know what? They're all pretty decent, So
yeah, usually as big as your face too.
So it hasn't been one specific place for me, but it's getting the Tex-Mex and the chicken fried steak going since I've been back here.
Nice. Well, if you have time and we have time and we all got our stuff done on Saturday, maybe we'll go get some Kincaid's after the game. That would be good. Well, yeah, I'm with you. Like most places in Texas, there's going to be a church on every corner, and there's going to be a good Mexican food place on every corner. Like, I mean, more often than not, I just feel like, I don't want to say it's hard to screw up, but, most of them do it right, like, and I feel like bad Mexican food is still Mexican food. Like, it's
Amen to that. Amen to that.
I just feel like I've very rarely in my life had enchiladas and rice and beans and been like, hey, that was bad.
Right.
I just don't know that it's happened. Obviously there've been degrees of great to good, but I don't think I've ever had bad,
Right. Zach knows that I sometimes will complain about what Baylor feeds us in the press box. Sometimes I complain about what they feed us on Mondays at Dave-Aranda's press conferences. Zach knows this. But if they give me Mexican food, which they did on Monday, from La Fiesta, I was happy. It was good. So yeah, cool. Well, Jimmy, appreciate you hopping on, and I think we're gonna maybe try to do a little high school podcast next week, right?
But you gotta get me the details, but I should be good to go. Yeah.
Awesome, cool. Well, we'll see you on Saturday. Thanks for doing it, man.
I appreciate it.